Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much, everybody, for being on the call today. My name is Jen Ewell. I'm the Director of the Women's Foundation of Montana. And we are the hosts of the Powerhouse Montana project. And we're very happy today to be hosting a discussion on mastering negotiation skills for women across the state. We will probably have about 30 to 50 women joining the conversation. And for those of you who are just getting on, please call in at 1-866-740-1260. And you can participate in the discussion. You will just hear us talking for the first part of the presentation, and then we will go ahead and open up the audio so that folks can ask direct questions of the presenters later on in the hour. I also like to tell folks from the beginning, of course, that if you have any background noise, it's really important when we do open up the audio to keep your own phone muted, and you can do that by pressing *6 or just mute your own phone so that it doesn't disturb the rest of the conversation. Here's a little bit about the Women's Foundation of Montana. We're a statewide organization. Our mission is to advance economic independence for Montana women and create a brighter future for girls. And many of you may know about us because we grant funds to nonprofits and different organizations across the state that are providing wage negotiation workshops for young women and science, technology, engineering, and math programs for girls, and a lot of other really great projects that are providing direct services and skills to women and girls that will help them to be economically successful in the future. But in addition to that, we also do statewide research and put out information on the status of women in Montana that helps to influence policymaking at the statewide level, and also educate all those great programs out there that are working to create opportunities for women. And we host a new project called Powerhouse Montana that I mentioned earlier. Powerhouse Montana is an online initiative. You can find it at www.powerhousemt.org. And it is all about connecting Montana women with the resources, mentors, and opportunities they need to be successful. And it's also about creating a go-to place for those folks out there who are interested in finding great women to hire or to have as a member of their board, because we know there's lots of them out there that are very qualified, and we really want to celebrate them and shine a light on those folks. So I wanted to introduce you to the two wonderful women who are going to be sharing their wisdom with you today. Jennifer Shryock is a business owner. She owns Rainmaker Resume. She has a lot of experience in the business world and has helped start businesses as well as run businesses. But at this point in her career, what she does is helps folks package themselves and create for themselves the lives that they want. And we're so pleased to have Jennifer here because she has a lot of wisdom to add to this conversation. So thanks, Jennifer, for being here.
Thank you, Jen, always.
Yeah, and especially, it's funny, we were just discussing, so Jennifer is in Arizona at the moment, and our other speaker, Susan Carstensen, is in Utah. So we're kind of pulling in folks from across the country here for you today. And Susan Carstensen, for those of you who may not be familiar, was one of the leaders in Right Now Technologies. She was the COO there and has many years of experience in the workforce and corporations and in leadership and in human resources. And I believe, are you the interim director at Workfront, Susan? Is that correct?
I'm the interim CEO.
CEO, yes.
Yep, it's a software company in Lehi, Utah.
That's awesome.
Work productivity solutions.
That's so great. Thank you for taking time out of your, I'm sure, very busy schedule to talk with us today, Susan. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, and it's an important topic, so happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm actually in Bozeman at the moment working remotely, so I wanted to let you all know if for some reason the slides go away, it is because we happen to be in a place where the internet is not fabulous. But if you stay on the line, you should be able to continue to hear our conversation, and we should be able to continue to have a telephone conference regardless of that. So let's get going. One of the reasons, of course, that the Women's Foundation is very interested in the topic of women negotiating for better pay and benefits is that we're one of the ones who has really led the conversation across the state about the pay differential. So there is a gender pay gap, as many of us know. I think we just had Equal Pay Day a couple of days ago, which is the day in which we recognized that on average women have made as much money as men made last year because of the pay differential. And here in Montana, ours is slightly larger. So on the national basis, I think the gender pay gap is about 78, 79 cents for women, and here in Montana it is closer to 74 or 75 cents, depending on the study that you look at. So that's something that the Women's Foundation is working to change. We recognize that one way we can change that is by ensuring that women start their careers at a good wage. So women are far less likely to ask for what they're worth in the interview process from the very beginning, and they're also less likely as they continue in their career to ask for raises and benefits that could really change outcomes for themselves and their family. And so that's something that we're interested in changing, and I think that both Jen and Susan can help us with that process. So let's get going, and I wanted to kind of jump right in and talk some about how you think about negotiating from the very beginning. And Susan and Jennifer, I know you both know a lot about this, but I'd love to hear from you some of your words of wisdom about how you think folks should kind of prepare to negotiate. If you have tips for people as they're thinking about potentially either negotiating in their first job hire or if they're thinking about maybe going to their boss and asking for more. Jen, why don't you start?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I am a big proponent of preparation, and so part of that is, as the slide demonstrates, to really know your value, and we'll talk about resources for how to learn your value. Later, you want to have some awareness of what's happening in the industry, what's happening locally, so that you can talk the numbers. But in addition to preparing your value and what number you'd like to provide and the scripting for your counteroffer, I recommend you prepare for the emotional dynamics of the negotiation as well. If you predict and prepare for how the negotiation works, then you're able to be present and be truly listening, which allows for so much more flow and for you to be the real you, to avoid the social cost of negotiation. There's a lot of data out there, and we all just sort of intuitively know that women who drive a hard bargain are taking a social risk, and sadly there's data to back that up. So there are ways for us to push and be likable, and in fact it's through likability and through presentation, through being present and communal in your language that you have the opportunity to push harder. It might not look like pushing as you define it. So preparation in that way is everything, and that's, I know, why you're all here.
Yeah, I know. I feel like as I talk about and encourage women to negotiate and to ask for more, that's one of the most common things I hear is that people are hesitant to start that negotiation process because they're afraid that for some reason there might be some kind of negative consequences of that. Susan, what's your take on it? What are some tips that you give people as they prepare to negotiate?
I agree completely with Jennifer that the preparation really is key. And when you think about preparation, it's, what is the market for the job you're looking at? And I'll give an actual very real life example. It's like Jennifer and I talked like this about a year ago, I think at Equal Pay Day.
Yep.
And I came into this new position, right, where I was asked to serve as the interim CEO for this software company. It's a venture-backed software company. And so I knew we were going to have a conversation about pay at some stage. And so I thought, okay, I better follow mine and Jennifer's advice in terms of preparation. And so what's the market? And so I'm like, it's like, what is the pay structure for an interim CEO? And so I was like, how do I figure this out? And it's a venture-backed company, and so I know a couple other venture partners, and so I just went straight to them and was like, well, how do you think of the structure? I wasn't asking them for the amount, but how do you think of the structure? How do people think about pay for an interim CEO? And I had one kind of right away go, you look at the normal CEO comp for a company that size, it's a $100 million company, and you figure out roughly the monthly amount of that, and then you add a 20 to 50% premium because you're doing, the board a great service. Because if they need an interim CEO, it's an opportunity for a company in transition to lose a lot of value. So you're stepping in, you're agreeing to disrupt your life and go take on this position, so you add a premium to it. And so I was like, okay. And then I checked with a couple more VCs, and they said the exact same thing. And I prepared it for myself and kind of did all the math around it and thought through, back to Jennifer's second point, my kind of target and what I thought my value was within the premium. And so when it came time for the conversation, I felt very well prepared, and it wasn't an emotional discussion. They threw out a number, and I was just like, well, I thought the structure for something like this was CEO pay plus a premium, and based on, the previous CEO pay, it seems like it should be something like, this to this, right at a range, and they made a change in the amount, and I just kept my mouth shut and paused for a minute, and then they added more to it, and literally in a 5-minute period, it went up by 42%.
What?
And it really was by knowing, kind of the market and the structure. And I don't hold anything against them for starting out lower. That is what people do. So when it goes back to, it's like, you want to negotiate or not, if you don't, you are just flat out leaving money on the table.
Yeah, and that is what certainly we find is that more often women take the first offer and don't necessarily go in prepared knowing what the job is actually worth and what they're actually worth. So that's a great story, yeah. Susan. Great illustration.
Well, and I'll just add one more thing. When you think about the social cost, to a great degree, I think if I hadn't kind of done my research and known what it was and then was able to have that discussion, I think the entire board would have had less confidence in me actually doing the job. They expected me to do what I did.
Yep. I've certainly seen, I think it's a Sheryl Sandberg quote that's often posted where she says, they're hiring me to be a negotiator, and so if I don't negotiate in the hiring process, then why would they hire me? So, yeah. I wanted to just encourage folks too, I didn't say this at the beginning, but if you do have questions as we go along, you are welcome to type them in your chat box that you will see on your screen, and those will come up on our screen too, and we may not be able to get to them right away, but we can try and get to them in the conversation as we go. And then as I mentioned, of course, at the end we'll have some time for folks to go ahead and ask questions too. Okay, so we know that folks need to think about doing their research and figuring out what the value of the position is. I know one of the issues that I've heard people mention is that they felt like part of what they should ask for in the interview process is based on the income that they had in the past, and so that is a problem for women sometimes if they were getting paid lower at their last job. If they base what they're going to ask for in the new job on that, it may not be as high as it could be. I don't know if you all have thoughts on that. I know sometimes even in interview processes, the interviewer will ask you, well, what were you being paid at your last job as a basis for your pay at your new job. What are your thoughts on that? Jen, do you have advice?
This is Susan, and I would just say that your pay at the last job, unless you are moving into a completely similar position, has zero relevance. And even if it is the same position, I'm not sure that it's relevant. It's like if you've done your research and kind of know the market, and know the general pay for the position, I would just reorient a question like, what were you being paid in your last job, to, well, my understanding of pay for this position is such and such, and
right.
that's what I would expect to be in the range of.
Yeah, that's great. Do you agree, Jen?
Yeah, I do, and I'd like to add, since I love that word reorient, Susan, that's fabulous. Back to research for a moment. Part of what we're researching is the scope of the job, and it's really easy to look up titles on payscale.com or salary.com and get an idea of the range of salary for a certain title, but part of your research involves understanding what you're being asked to do and possibly even negotiating what you want to do. So remember, when we're negotiating, we're not just negotiating for salary. We're negotiating for all sorts of terms, including the expectations of the job. And it's sort of irrelevant to negotiate for salary if you're not negotiating for a salary for specific tasks. So before you answer or really get into any of the salary negotiation, start with, if you don't already have a comprehensive understanding of what you're being asked to do, a conversation about that. Based on what you negotiate in terms of the scope of your job, now you can come in with more relevant numbers. So if people ask you specifically what you earned before, and you've already assessed whether what you've done before is totally relevant to this next job, it's always awkward to avoid a question or completely deny answering a question. So I love Susan's word about reorienting. One thing you can do is ask point blank, and you do it with a smile. You do it in a way that's very likable. Data shows that if you're likable, you have the potential of earning 6 times higher or getting 6 times the results in different situations. So likability is key here. So remember, you're always asking these questions in a communal way, trying to look for the win-win. But you can just come right out and say, are you making me an offer or are you fishing for information? And then sort of, period smile is what I coach folks to do. Stop, smile, breathe, because we often get nervous if somebody doesn't respond, and we just keep talking. And then, they may ask again, and you could say something like, I'm sure you've got a range in mind. Or you could present your own range, which is the third thing. Even if they don't respond, then you present the range based on the data that you've researched, what you know about the market. You want to come in at a higher range. There are probably different ranges around, so you want to be a little bit high, because that's, as Susan was talking in her example story, they're going to come in low, you're going to come in high. But you never want to come in unreasonable, because that's risking that social cost.
Right. So there's also this debate often.
Could I just ask?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Could I just ask Jennifer a question back? Because one other approach I've thought makes sense, because I am in that category of, if that's the direct question, I tend to want to answer it. But so I would be more than likely to answer it, but then say, but I am looking at this opportunity with you because I'm I've earned my way, or learned my way, and would like the opportunity to contribute at a higher level. And so I think the compensation for this position would be different.
Bingo. That's exactly right. And remember that statistically, our salaries can raise more if we change employers, change jobs, than if we just negotiate for a raise. So it's understood that there's an opportunity to take us a bump. And yet you can even say things like, and this is really likable, I'm looking to contribute and be compensated for X, Y, Z. And you can talk about your shared future together, about how this is you're looking forward to contributing to the success of this person that's interviewing you, to this panel, to this organization. You can, preface this conversation with, and I know you'll compensate me for that. and then you
Yep.
can present your range or ask them to present a range. So you can take that step from your old facts. What you never want to do is lie about it. So if you probably don't want to come to an impasse. So if you're trying to avoid the answering the question, you want to reorient, exactly as you said, Susan, redirect with this sort of language, or answer outright, and then follow with this stepping up, leveling up to a higher range of earning potential. You never want to lie, of course, or fib, or get into an impasse.
So it sounds like from your discussion that you both feel like it's helpful. So here's what I see. I think I hear from women a lot of times a tendency to want to offer to start at the lower end of the range, thinking that will make them more desirable and more likely to get hired. And what it sounds like you're both saying is that perhaps you should say that you expect to start either at the higher end of the range or even a little bit above range. Is that true?
It depends on your experience and what you're bringing to the table. I mean, if you really are applying for a job that is something kind of new, where you are taking on new responsibilities, realistically, if the employer, if the employer's doing the right thing, there is a market range for that position. And if you're highly experienced and the top candidate, they should pay at the top of the range. If you're a less experienced candidate and you're using it to move up into a new position and then you want to grow, the lower end of the range is what makes sense.
Got it.
Yeah, I agree. They may present a range, and if you've got the data and the experience to prove that they're not in the range that you're in, you
Right.
can present a higher range. But yeah, just to say, well, I'm hoping for this number that's 50% higher than what I've ever made before without any justification is unlikely. One thing you said in the question, Jen, was that the tendency for women is to accept the initial offer and not negotiate, and that's exactly true. We often have a belief that we'll take whatever, we just want to get in the door, and then we're going to prove ourselves and then negotiate. But what men do is they negotiate first. They get to a range that they're comfortable starting with, and then they prove themselves, and then they negotiate for the range. So there's a big step missing for many of us women, and the men are showing, and this conversation is demonstrating that there are ways that we can come in and negotiate first as well as later for the raise after we've proven ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the ideal thing is to be proving your capabilities, showing your worth, demonstrating why they want you, kind of explaining your value, all kind of without talking dollars initially. I mean, you do want to sell yourself. Again, back to my example, the reason I was in such a strong kind of leveraged position was, they needed me.
Yeah. And let's talk more about then how the progression goes, because we've started sort of hinting at that. So you come into your initial interview, they're interested, and you're saying maybe they don't even, you don't talk about numbers yet. And then at what point, so I would assume then they would come back to you with an offer. At what point then is it appropriate to be talking about other things that are important to you besides the money? Does that happen sometimes in the initial discussion, or is that something that happens later? What are your thoughts on that?
I personally think you want to have the conversation about all the things that matter to you up front, because there are trade-offs, and you want it to all end up in a negotiation. But I think what you care about, you should talk about as soon as possible.
I do too, and I also agree that when you're talking about salary, if you come to a point where you recognize that they can't budge anymore, or they're not going to budge anymore, remember that there are other things you can negotiate for that may well flesh out the package. And as your slide shows, make that pie bigger for you. So there are lots of things you can talk about, and often we get hung up on the one number, but other perks, other terms can be very valuable in terms of both dollars and, say, time. Things like performance expectations, benefits, perks, how you schedule your salary increases and reviews, severance pay, insurance. There's just a long list of things that training, certifications that can help add to your ability to earn money that they might pay for. Or if balance is more of a priority, then you talk about that.
Right. And I do feel like, especially living in Montana, what's oftentimes maybe even more of a benefit is being able to work, for instance, from home or having flexible hours or, there's just so many pieces of it that are perhaps just as valuable.
That's right. And sometimes we're so focused on the number that we're not present to the conversation, we're not really listening, and we miss out on other possibilities that we can negotiate on that we're getting clues for. But because we're so focused on the number, we miss them.
Yeah.
For example, in my conversation about this position, I have a number of commitments to other boards or activities like this, or some people, and so part of the framing the entire discussion was I need certain time. I can't be there all the time because I have this whole life. I have this whole other life I'm leading. But that became an important part, as well as I have a couple colleagues that I wanted to be able to come in and help. And that was very important to me in terms of the overall how I could sign up and take on this job.
So you were able to kind of bring in your own team.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. So another thing that I wanted to chat with both of you about is if you feel like, and I think we have already kind of started this conversation a little bit, but if you feel like there are common pitfalls or things that you see come up for women that are challenges that end up meaning that their negotiation isn't very successful, what are some of those that you feel like people need to think about and try and avoid?
I'll jump in here. This is Jennifer. One we've already talked about. We accept the first offer. We have lower expectations and accept lower pay. We don't negotiate at all at the beginning. We expect to do it later based on merit, not failing to recognize the early opportunity. And then if we do get into a negotiation, we take no for an answer and stop without being creative or countering or proposing other solutions and opportunities. And the first point we talked about, this research, one of the common pitfalls, not pit bulls, is failure to prove the work, keep score of what you've been doing, provide relevant information about how what you do is going to provide value to the team that you're joining. And therefore, it's a commodity that comes at a cost. And they'll want to pay it if you can talk about yourself in those terms of what you can produce. We often have a fear that we'll either sound too pushy or too eager. So there's a pitfall of just not negotiating at all out of fear there. Not understanding the style of negotiation, just how it works. Susan's example is just a great, demonstration of it's not personal. They're just going to come in low. It's a test. And it's totally okay to come in higher. And sometimes they just agree. They see the value of the argument you've made. We often feel guilty asking or fear that we're going to lose an offer. I think that's maybe the biggest issue. Is if I ask for more, I'm going to lose this opportunity and I won't have the job. So I can go on and on. Those are some of the really common pitfalls that I come across.
Yeah. To reinforce Jennifer's point, a pitfall that people have used in interviews and negotiations with me is they'll say, well, I need this, especially women, I need this amount of money. And as an employer, I don't, that is not my problem. I need to pay for the best qualified candidate, kind of the market and the position, And so saying I need this kind of money, it is more about what Jennifer said. It's what you can produce, what you can contribute to the organization, why you're more valuable than anybody else, and therefore should be paid more. But I need this amount to pay my bills isn't going to cut it, because that's not a win-win situation for the company and the candidate.
Yeah, it's not about your personal feelings and needs. It's about, as you're saying, the win-win and the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
that
ties
into a really common resume problem, and resume is a little bit off topic, but remember when resumes had the objective, and everyone's objective said, the opportunity to do interesting work and get benefits. It was really self-based of, I want a job. And often when I'm interviewing my clients, what is it that you're looking for? And my question means, what is it that you want to do, and why? Why are you excited to do it, and what kind of results do you want to produce? But some folks will get into this mentality, well, I want a job with benefits. I want a full-time job. And you really want to shift your thinking and put on the hiring manager's hat and really think, what is it that they're hiring somebody for? Of course, that person wants to get paid for it, but let's talk about the meatier information of, what are we going to do here? What are we going to produce here? And how will that be valuable to you, the organization?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. What is it that you can do for them that's going to be great for both the employer and the employee? I think, too, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we're encouraging women to go into the interview, research, be prepared, go be confident. How would you suggest that people who just don't feel confident, who don't feel like this is something they can do, how can they make themselves ready to do it? How does that process work?
Can I start just to stick with my current example, because it's I sound like, I knew exactly what I was doing and I was very confident. I went back, it's like these two colleagues that I work with, and I role played it with them, and they were my cheerleaders, and they're like, you are so worth it, and they so need you, and you should up it even more, and so literally kind of role playing it with people who will also reinforce your confidence is very helpful.
Yeah, so you need kind of a practice team, maybe.
Yep.
That'd be good. Yeah,
that's right. And we're doing it now. You're educating yourself. This is part of your research. You're attending a webinar, learning about how negotiation works. That preparation that we keep coming back to, a lot of that is done aloud, is done, playing off of somebody else in a mock negotiation, a mock interview, to get used to the emotional dynamics of it, to understand better how negotiations work. How does the script work? And the more you practice and understand that, the more confidence, just like any other skill, the more confidence you have, the more you've done. And so, you can practice with your friends, you can practice with your mentors, you can hire a coach. There are lots of ways that you can become more knowledgeable, and that's always the first step. And then practice it and build out your skill set so that you can go in and be present to the task with a degree of confidence that's not contrived. It's not, I should be this confident, or a guy would be this confident. You can still be you, but a highly skilled you when you go into negotiation.
Yeah. It seems like it would be helpful to have a really – go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and this is a really kind of incidental, but it's like, think about what confidence boosters work for you individually. this sounds really funny, but again, back to this last negotiation. And it was over the phone, and I was back at my house in Bozeman, but I literally went and put on, I wouldn't call them my big girl pants, but I put on my black jacket, which is kind of my confidence jacket. It's the power play suit thing, and I wore it on the phone when I had the conversation because it made me feel better and more confident in what I was doing. And that's going to be unique and individual, to each of you. But think about what that is. For my daughter, it used to be this one red shirt.
There are also there's a TED Talk, and I'm not sure of the title of it, but it's about power poses. That there are certain positions, postures that we take physically that change our chemistry, and so we can give ourselves a little boost of testosterone, which it's just a biochemistry of confidence. And of course, too much of a good thing has its own issues. But you can bump up your confidence in a very physical way by, doing explosive breathing or standing in these power positions or wearing your power suit. I have a super suit, and it just looks like a normal suit, but like suits, and I feel badass when I'm wearing it. And you can do things to bump it up, even just in the short term, to help you while you're preparing, while you're practicing, and then while you're negotiating.
Yeah, I've seen that webinar too. That TED Talk, and I thought it was really great. I think you can find it on the Lean In website. They have a bunch of different resources, and that's one of them. So I wanted to give you a question from one of our participants. Chelsea says, this has been such a great conversation so far, and I'd really like to learn more strategies for negotiating within your existing job for raises or promotions. Do you think there are different strategies or tips you might give somebody who's already in the workplace but maybe wants to advance?
The first, and I think I've got my stats right, but I'm not exactly sure, but the kind of rule of thumb is that men will apply for a promotion or ask for new responsibilities when they're like 60% qualified. And that women won't look for the new job or ask for the new job or raise their new hand unless they believe they're like 90+% qualified. And so if you really, so within a company, part of it is you can't wait. You can't wait till you're 90 or 100% qualified for the next opportunity. You do have to go ask for it. And you do have to make sure that, your boss, that other people, one, you're doing a great job, but then two, that people know you are really actively interested in progressing. And you do that, sometimes by volunteering for different assignments, sometimes for volunteering for cross-functional projects, sometimes for, just making sure that you just have to make sure they all know that you are in it and looking for that. Because anybody you're competing with for that advancement or the promotion will be doing that, and they'll be saying it all the time. And so if you're delivering on some of the value, you've got it known out there that you want to do more for the company. It makes it much easier to go in and if you can go demonstrate past performance, that you think you've moved up kind of either a whole level in your existing job, such that instead of being a junior engineer, you should be a senior engineer or a senior accountant to a manager. You just need to go. You need to show you've delivered, and then initiate the conversations.
Susan,
yeah, so sort of a long-term
how do you feel about
strategy.
setting up that meeting to ask? I coach my clients to, never try to do it by the cooler and this sort of, oh, hey, by the way, can you speak to that at all as an employer?
I agree with that completely. It's not you can casually, if something's coming up, you can certainly, you can start proving that you want more by casually going, oh, yeah, I'd love to be part of that team, da-da-da-da-da. But if you're going to have a formal conversation about advancement or promotion or increase in compensation, you want to set up a meeting and clearly indicate what it's about.
Great. And of course the performance review time, if you haven't specifically gone to them and asked for a promotion, you have been thinking like a boss the whole time. What, as Susan mentioned, what projects can I take on? What certifications can I get? How can I add value to what I'm doing? And then you can use the performance review as an opportunity as well to talk about compensation. And just like in the initial offer, you talk about your performance first, the expectations first, and then you can say, okay, and you can say it at the beginning, once we've gone over my performance, I'm looking forward to discussing my compensation. And you do it in a similar way. You know your range, you know your ideal number. You go for the higher end of the range. You justify it with proof. You show all that you've been doing, and you do that part during the review. And this is a tactic you can do either for the raise or for the salary. If they're offering, you're counter offering, you're going back and forth, and you get to an impasse, or it feels like one, and you're not yet satisfied, you can say something like, I know you might not be able to reach my ideal number, even though you might think I'm worth it. What can we do to get closer to it? And you've shifted into this collaborative, very reasonable conversation where it's give and take.
Yep. That's great advice, Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer, I loved the fact that, so I've read a lot of this information about learning how to negotiate, and I feel like, your strategy is a lot more sort of cooperative and collaborative than a lot of others that are put out there. The slide I just put up is one that I feel like you see a lot, which is, be ready to walk away from the table and know your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated deal is the as sort of like your bottom line going in. What's your advice as far as strategy for folks as they're going into negotiations about, sort of when to walk away or how to decide that?
Well, I recommend that you don't walk away in the middle of the conversation. You can always choose to decline an offer, but this is networking, this is bridge building. These negotiations are great experience for you. And a huge part of, a woman's toolbox is the ability to collaborate. So we have a belief that we've got to push, that we've got to be tough, that we've got to be just like a man, but, with long hair. And the reality is the opposite. The nicer you are, the more opportunity you have to push. And pushing is redefined. Pushing just means reminding them of your priorities. But likability it's just key. You're going to get further if you can demonstrate that I can maintain relationships and I can stay in the conversation without backing down. So that doesn't mean forcing somebody into a corner. It doesn't mean giving an ultimatum. Nobody likes one. And we have this belief that that's the kind of behavior that is successful in negotiation. But in reality, it's the reverse, especially for us women, but really for anyone. You use the communal we. You talk about how you have a vision of the shared future that you and this organization have. How when they hire you, it'll be in a way that they flourish because of that hire. You talk about, and you don't have to be direct about this. You can imply that hiring me will look good to this person making the hiring decision. That emotional currency, especially when you've got the proof and the experience to back it up, allows you to be gentle and relationship building even as you're tough and strong and standing tall. You don't have to have a hard voice. You don't have to use hard language, and you certainly don't have to walk out of the room to be a very effective negotiator.
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer, because negotiating, if you think about it, you're not negotiating for you to win and somebody else to lose. You really are negotiating. It's almost like, put that idea or that concept or whatever at the center of the table. The two of you are negotiating to actually get to a yes. And so that ability to collaborate and have the conversation and figure out what wins for you and what wins for me and what matters to each, it isn't. It's just not. It's not a win lose. It's not a game, and it's not a win lose. The point is to get to yes.
Yeah, and one of the ways to do that, you're so right, Susan, is to listen closely. If you understand what's driving this organization, and you must, or you wouldn't have gotten to this negotiation in the first place. You understood it enough to get the interview, to get the offer. If you can understand, and part of it is listening right there in this current conversation, to get a feel for what kind of leeway do they have, what can they do, what, even more important, what is it that they need from you? And you can use that language about how you look to contribute in those ways. You're showing how you're going to be a win for them. And yeah, you never want anyone to lose. You do want to be willing to walk away from parts of your package. The more it feels to the person you're negotiating against that you're willing to give up, the more they feel like you're reasonable. And so it's nice when you're in a fluid position. You've got an idea of the package. You've got ranges of salary, of benefits. But you're feeling very fluid, which doesn't mean like a doormat. It means creative and in sort of a perpetual creative response to the conversation and all of the cues that are coming to you. And if somebody gives you a no, then you get creative instead of walking away. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. So Jennifer, that leads well into a question we had from a participant. Amy says, other than salary, what other things have you negotiated for? Do you guys have some creative ideas? I know Susan talked about bringing her team with her earlier, which would be a great thing. That's a negotiating item, but I don't know if there are other things that would be good to think about in the package.
Oh my gosh, it could be so many things. It could be, the obvious of flex time and vacation or wellness days. It could also be training and tuition. Absolutely bringing a team member. It could be health clubs, transportation, computers, housing, profit sharing, equity, Susan mentioned, I think. The kind of support that you get. Remember that before we're talking about numbers, we're talking about the scope of your job, and a huge part of what you're negotiating for is the influence to do your job well. And so please consider including that in the conversation either before the salary or as part of it. Make sure that you're being offered an opportunity where you can succeed, and think in a comprehensive way about what it will take for you to do that and to succeed in a way that feels like success to you as well as your employer.
Yes, definitely. Anything you want to add to that, Susan?
No, I really think you covered it. I mean, I'm obviously in the middle of the software world, so equity is there. It's been interesting at this company. One of the best parts about it, and I mean it gets awards as being one of the best places to work in Utah, is because it does offer. I struggle with the term work-life balance, but it offers far more opportunities for like an integrated life, for example. And one of the things they offer is flat out, unlimited PTO, because and it's really you're responsible, and you're responsible for communicating with your manager and everything. But if guy on my team yesterday is like, I need to leave at 1:00 because I'm going to my daughter's track meet. It's like, great, and anyway, I mean, situations like that and making it really work for you in your life are huge.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I think I'm hopeful that is the work future that we are all working towards, is one in which we can both succeed in our personal lives and our work lives at the same time.
Right, and really integrate them. I mean, work's a funny thing. I mean, it's tough to just go, 8 to 5 or whatever the hours and then walk away, and that's part of what you can bring to it too. Is it's like if you're a little more flexible, the companies can be more flexible. It's like, yeah, go to the track meet, but make sure we get this done in time for this meeting with this customer tomorrow. Those are fair trade-offs.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk also about, what if you go into the negotiation and you get a no? And obviously if you're applying for a job for the first time, then maybe you walk away and look for a different one. But if you were, in your mid-career and you ask for a raise and they say no, what do you think the conversation is from there? What would you advise women to do as far as moving from that towards, the raise that they want in the future?
Chances are, in that meeting, if you just ask for a raise because you said you're delivering more or you're looking for a promotion or something like that, they may say, no, I don't have a role at that level available right now. I don't have it in the budget. They may say, no, you haven't demonstrated that you've earned it, or that you have delivered more such that I can pay more. They may say, just I wish I could, but I don't have any more money. I think the key then is to kind of go, well, what could I do? What could I do to advance here? What projects, what role? Is there additional training? Is there what do I need to do? I really love this company. I want to succeed here, but I really want to contribute. I want to contribute more, and I want to advance. And so learning as much. I guess short answer to that is you got to learn as much information as you can, and try and determine whether it's actually possible in the current role. And then if it's not, you need to make a realistic assessment and go, can you take your experience and skills elsewhere? And changing a job sometimes does increase your often does.
Yeah, great. So finding out what next steps you can take. Jennifer, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's so great, Susan. I really think that, staying at the table in the conversation, we want to be respectful of a no. Okay, you mean no, and they may well mean no about this point. But again, to be in that state of, you're just thinking on your feet. Okay, then what else? And staying in the conversation. Sometimes you're just at a little temporary sticky point and not at a total impasse, and just sort of changing the game. Maybe get up, get a glass of water, look out the window for a second. Sometimes just a shift can help you to think creatively, or maybe even loosen the conversation again back into a volley. Maintaining the relationship. But as Susan said, we should always be at least have an eye to what else is happening in our industry or potential opportunities in our lives, not to be disloyal and not to be greedy, not to negotiate just to negotiate or to switch jobs only for money, but to, as part of our research, as part of our ongoing assessment in what has become kind of a freelance nation, hasn't it, where opportunities change, situations change, and it's just so good to have that awareness. And when we know that there are other opportunities out there, that helps us in the job interview, doesn't it? We're not desperate. We're not white knuckling, trying to will them to a yes. It's much more of a creative conversation with the awareness that there are other potential conversations out there always.
Great. Thank you so much. So we are running out of time, as tends to happen in these conversations, and I wanted to go ahead and unmute everybody's lines and allow you the opportunity to ask direct question of Jennifer or Susan. So I'm going to do that now. Please make sure you don't have background noise as we do it.
The conference has been unmuted. The conference has been unmuted.
Wonderful. So if anybody has a question they'd like to ask, now is the time.
Hi, this is Hatton Littman. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. I appreciate all of the discussion we've had about being able to demonstrate value to the employer in terms of tangible producibles or deliverables. And I'm really curious, any suggestions you might have for working around the conversation when, even in the face of clear data and demonstrated successes, when superiors still don't seem to agree with ascribing a certain value to all of that. Even when it's presented right in front of them, there's sort of this gap in understanding or lack of attaching value to that, even when the data is right in front of them.
So this is Susan. There's one piece that's like attaching, kind of value to an individual's deliverables. It does need to be within context of. I guess I'm trying to picture what the employer might be thinking or doing, and what they might be saying is, yes, it's valuable, but that is the job, and the market for that job is X, and I can't pay you more just because I like you. This is the market for the job, and the employer is only going to be saying that if they can readily find additional candidates who can do that job. So if it's you and you're going, I am doing more, you really want to aim for the promotion. And it's like it's not just that what you're delivering has value, but you're delivering at a value that's in a different, that's a higher level role. And with that higher level role, there should be higher pay. Jennifer, any other? I'm not sure if I was concrete enough on that.
Yeah, there's definitely. I'm questioning it too. What's the motivation for the employer to use that kind of language? There are a couple of questions that you might want to ask, and I always think of these in a playful term, like this isn't a script you want to follow just because you've read it or heard it, but you feel into how it feels to ask other questions. And a couple that I have learned, I'm reading a lot by hostage negotiators, and of course they understand the dynamics of negotiations so well. And a couple of questions that they ask when it seems like they're getting an unreasonable response is, and how do I do that? And then just waiting for the answer. So if they're saying, nope, you're going to have to keep doing your job at this rate no matter what your research says, and how do I do that? And just really going in with an open mind to hearing an answer that may not be as defensive as we predict it could. And another question is, or it's a statement really, said gently, it seems like there's nothing you can do. And just naming what it feels like you're hearing, and you'll get more data from, or you may get more information from this question or statement. If you're talking to a person of authority, nobody likes to be assessed as powerless, and so it may spur something. Also, it's kind of you're creating a gap in the conversation, an opportunity where somebody might jump in and propose a solution. So you've been the one, it sounds like, proposing a solution, and that's appropriate to start. If you come to an impasse, it might be appropriate to turn it back to them. Then how can I do this? Or what do you recommend? Or it seems like there's nothing you can do. And just see what happens from there.
Oh, I love those. I just wrote those down.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Does anybody else have a question out there they'd like to ask? We have about time for maybe one more. Well, one of the things I wanted to invite both of you to do, if you have thoughts, is volunteer a couple resources that you think might be helpful. We have on the screen a few ideas of places people can go to learn more. But if you have thoughts, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. I'm just glancing at the screen to make sure I don't repeat anything. Leaning in, you already referenced the website. Cheryl talked a lot about this communal language and about social cost. Then taking it even further to this research I've been doing on hostage negotiations is fabulous. And they really take it further to where you're not just being communal, but you're being communal to the future. We're going to work together and it's going to be great. I'm going to keep you alive would be the hostage negotiator's stance, and yours would be I'm going to help bring you success. So I don't have a specific resource for that. I've just been sort of surfing for those. There is another book, though, in addition to Leaning In, that's good, A Woman's Guide to Successful Negotiations by Jessica Miller and Lee E. Miller.
Great.
Yep. I referenced it a little bit, and I'm going old school on the book, but there is one called Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In, that I read as part of a training session probably 25 years ago that still stays with me, and it has had incredible impact on my life.
I have heard that one referenced a lot, so that's great.
I also have several websites, and I can just verbally name them off if you want me to.
Sure. Let us.
So I see Glassdoor on here. There's also payscale.com, salary.com, careerjournal.com. The Bureau of Labor Statistics may or may not be helpful depending on your industry. The Harvard Business Review has such a wealth of information on all sorts of topics. Ask a Manager is a former HR manager who you can interview. You can send in questions similar to the format we've had today. And The Ladders sometimes has negotiating posts as well, theladders.com.
Wow, that's great. You're a wealth of knowledge. Okay, well, I might ask you to send me those too, and then as follow-up, we will go ahead and post this, certainly the audio recording, and hopefully also the slides. We're trying to get that figured out technology-wise on Powerhouse website, www.powerhousemt.org. And I can also send a follow-up email to folks with the link to that. And then also, Jennifer, if you remind me of some of those websites, I can send them those too.
Consider it done.
Yay. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you to our presenters. You are amazing, and I think just the wealth of knowledge between you can get us all very far. So I appreciate you being willing to share that with all of us. And thanks to all of you women out there who participated online and in the conversation. Yes, good luck as you move forward in your careers and with your negotiation. We'd love to hear about your experience too. So feel free to email Kelsey or I if you have experiences you want to share with others. And if you are interested in contacting Susan or Jennifer, I'm proud to say that they're both on Powerhouse Montana, so you can find them there and contact them through that website. So
thank you so much, Jen.
Yep.
It's a pleasure.
Have a good one.
And, again, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.